Good morning, everyone. Tim here, aka Renfail, and welcome to episode 2 of Mondays in MMORPGs, where we cover lots of different topics around the MMORPG genre and some past games, some new games, and just pretty much whatever's on my mind. And this week, what's on my mind is microtransactions. So microtransactions are something fairly controversial, especially in recent times. Now, the thing you have to understand about microtransactions, which I think most people do, is that everyone hates them, at least from the gaming side of things. But from the business side of things, there is no more lucrative way to line investors' pockets and generate profit in the current gaming landscape than by using microtransactions. And while the system has risen to prominence in the past decade, to the point where the vast majority of MMORPGs currently have shunned the subscription model in favor of these larger profits, it is unfortunately a system that is pretty rife with poorly executed versions. I mean, at its core, it's fundamentally this profit-driven economic model, which is great for investors, but not so great because it kind of means that the needs and wants of a given player base are completely ignored in favor of whatever can generate the most amount of money for these companies. For us in particular, we've often looked at transactions from the side of the gamer and said, we don't really like them. We've seen some good examples of systems working well. I personally would argue that Elder Scrolls Online, for example, is a prime example of a game that has done microtransactions fairly well, not without their share of controversy, but they've learned as they've went along, and they continue to kind of set the pace for everyone else. The vast majority of companies do not have systems that work relatively well, especially if you look towards Electronic Arts and the recent fiasco revolving around the fumbled Battlefront 2 launch. So this is a system that's gone so completely off the rails in the extreme sense. It's on the extreme end of the spectrum of companies trying to nickel and dime players, for every little thing that they can. And good or bad, regardless of how you feel about the uproar from the gaming community, the reality is that enough people stood up and said enough is enough, that EA had decided to suspend microtransactions just prior to the game launch. This is, however, temporary. It's worth noting that it's only for the meantime. But it is kind of proof that companies are maybe starting to look at how bad that system is and how maybe they need to rethink their implementation. It's kind of something where microtransactions have become so prevalent in the space that single-player games have become unprofitable. No one wants to make single-player games. And one doesn't have to look any further than, once again, EA, and look at the recent closure of Visceral Studios and all the press surrounding the in-development Star Wars games that so many people, including myself, were looking forward to, which was a single-player, narrative-driven story by Amy Hennig, who's the woman behind the Uncharted series. We were all looking forward to that, and then EA came in and shut down Visceral Studios and shipped that out to their other studios within the EA umbrella and said, we're completely revamping that game to be multiplayer because we understand that microtransactions make the most amount of money. Now, they didn't exactly say that in their press release, but they did say that, they're revamping it to be a more multiplayer title. And then you've got BioWare echoing statements of the same ilk regarding the Mass Effect series and how microtransactions drive the most amount of income. Even most recently, I was reading a press announcement from CD Projekt on the Cyberpunk 2077 project, and they're talking about how they're going to be including online elements to assure profitability. The reality is that microtransactions make lots of money. The current generation of players love free-to-play titles. Mobile games are huge right now, and there's a reason for that, because people can get in, they can play a mobile game, it's easy, they can play it for 10 to 15 minutes, they can grind out their dailies, pick up their badges, then log off and do the same in the next title, and they've got a library of 15, 20 free-to-play games that they cycle throughout during the day, and they might spend $5 or $10 here and there in each shop to make their character more unique in lieu of a monthly subscription. But the reality is that these companies are never capturing these players' attention for more than a few brief seconds or even minutes at most. And that's it. Then they're gone to the next project. But when a game looks at the profit margins and says we're only interested in how much money we can make from this game, then it doesn't matter how much time people are spending in these titles because they just are worried about that bottom dollar. So allowing people to play these games for free and then getting them to spend $5, $10, $15, $20 a month through the microtransaction system is more profitable for companies on the long end. At the Austin Game Conference recently, I can't remember the exact number, but when we were at one of the talks, there was a company in attendance that was talking about how the free-to-play market, they might only have like 30% at most. And this is me not remembering the exact numbers, but it wasn't above 30. I'd have to look at my notes, and I don't know where those are at right now. But the vast majority of players who play the free-to-play games don't pay anything. But the ones that do pay tend to pay more than they would have gotten had the entire group of players been paying a monthly subscription. Now, these are the people who have disposable income and are whales. My brother's a very good example of this because he was playing Star Wars The Old Republic for free, but then he would spend $50, $75 a month on these cosmetic items. And people do the same in Elder Scrolls Online. I'm one of those people, by the way. I played Elder Scrolls Online a couple of years ago, and I paid for the monthly subscription because I always pay for the monthly subscription because I want access to all of the game content, not just a little bit of the game content. But then their cash shop just has so many cool things in it that can make your character look unique. And it's so easy to just say, oh, that's $10? Not a problem. I've got $10. You know, I would just as easily spend $10 on a cup of coffee and a muffin at Starbucks. So why wouldn't I do it for something that I really enjoy in a video game? I'm getting that same sense of gratification. And that's why the microtransaction system is so successful, because it does appeal to our sense of gratification. We can instantly have something that makes us feel good. Therefore, we're going to do it because we like that dopamine. We like that feeling of feeling good. So understanding all of that, we know that microtransactions work. We know that they can be successful, and we've seen examples of games where it's been implemented fairly decently. We also have hybrid games like EverQuest, World of Warcraft, EVE Online, Final Fantasy 14. We're actually playing EverQuest right now on one of the TLP servers, which means we pay $15 a month to access that server because we want 100% of the content. Now, we don't actually have access to the cash shop on that server because it's old school. But for us, we're more than happy to pay that subscription because that's how we prefer to play our games. Now, when we started looking at how we wanted to do Saga of Lucimia, from the very first day, we said that we didn't want to do microtransactions. And that's because the vast majority of the team is we're really against microtransactions as a whole because of the way we've seen some games take the model. A good example would be Lord of the Rings Online, which in my opinion was one of the greatest MMORPGs ever released. I played the hell out of it for a long time when it was subscription based. And then the moment that it went free to play, it changed. And now it's become pay to win, and you just pretty much can buy everything. You can buy XP pots, you can buy all these different things. And not just that, but like to even just use the mailbox, you have to pay money. And if you want to access quest content in a zone, you have to pay money. And they've made it so difficult to do anything. They're basically trying to force you to pay that monthly subscription. They're saying, look how sucky the game is free to play. Like, we're going to nickel and dime you for everything. But it would be much better if you just pay that subscription. Now, for the person who only plays once a month or twice a month, it might make sense to pay for the content on a pay-as-you-go manner because you're only paying it, a day or two here and there. Or if you're playing a game where you're only logging in for 15, 20 minutes to grind out your dailies, like a mobile game or some of these free-to-play titles, pick up your badges and then log off and do it all over again in the next game. It makes sense to have a free-to-play title with a cash shop in those games because it's not about building up any relationships with players. You're not actually providing them with a living, breathing world with which to log into. But when we started developing our game, we said, what is Saga of Lucimia? It's a tabletop game. It's a universe. It is this massive continent, the whole world, the magic system, thousands of years of history. This is something where we want players investing time in. And one of the things we keep coming back to is that this is just a tabletop game with a digital face. You don't really play micro sessions when you sit down and play a tabletop game. You typically plan your sessions in advance, and then you meet up with your friends at these scheduled times, and then you play for prolonged periods of time, usually over the course of 2 to 4 hours. And then those sessions typically span weeks, months, and years as you continue to advance through this world that you're living in. So you don't play a game like that without making a significant investment of time into the character that you're giving life to. So for us, when we started looking at how we were going to design our game, we said that the monthly subscription model is what works best for our type of game because, yes, it's the model we prefer, so it's natural that we gravitate to that, but it's also the model that many of us old school gamers prefer and we're familiar with because it's this model that offers the most value to the customers. You get 100% access to 100% of the game, 100% of the game for a flat monthly fee. There's no hidden charges, no exceptions, no DLC, none of that stuff. It's just, here's your $15, $20 a month, and here's the game, have fun. And that's actually one of the reasons that all of us on the development team and all of our close personal friends, we still pay monthly fees for the games we enjoy playing, even though most of these games have gone free to play. EQ and ESO are just prime examples of that. Star Wars: The Old Republic as well. We've gone back and played that. We've gone back and played Lord of the Rings Online, and every time we do, we sub up for 3 to 6 months because we want 100% access to the games. And we also play enough to justify that expense because we're not just logging in for 5 or 10 minutes here and there. We're logging in for 3 or 4 hours, 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes more, and we're investing time into those games and into the friendships and relationships that we have with those people. So for us, when we're building a type of game where players are going to be logging in for long periods of time, it's worth that monthly subscription because you're actually in this living, breathing world. Now, some people have come to us and said you're going to fail because you have to have microtransactions to be successful in the current genre and the current marketplace. And it's true that we could make a lot more money if we had a cash shop in the game. We could. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We could make a lot more money adding microtransactions into the game and a cash shop. But we've said for a long time that just wasn't the model that we wanted to look at. For us, we kind of look at it as if we can't manage to offer enough of a value to the players to feel justified in paying their monthly fee to play our game, then we haven't done our job as game developers. We have to create enough content that makes it worth it for people and create a world that's interesting enough and fun enough that it's worth it to pay that monthly fee to play our game. And I think that's a big area where many modern games have kind of switched off, is they're not making games that are worth paying a monthly fee for because they're not interested in building games like that. They're just interested in getting the most amount of money, so they're targeting that instant gratification demographic, which will just come in and make these impulse purchases on $5 or $10 items. We've heard all the arguments against it. We've actually had 2 publishers talk to us who were interested in Saga of Lucimia, but both of them wanted us to go free to play and switch to a cash shop, and we said no both times. It's just not, it doesn't make sense for the type of game we're building, which is why, for better or worse, we're opting for a subscription-based model. So for those of you who like microtransactions, we'd love to hear from you. Why do you like microtransactions? Why do you think microtransactions are the best option? Why do you not like microtransactions? Why do you like the subscription model so much like we do? Are you someone who invests a lot of time in games, or do you only play for 5 or 10 minutes here and there? We'd love to hear from you, so let me know. I'll get a response back to you guys as soon as I can. Appreciate you guys listening. Let me know what you think of these episodes, the topics and so on and so forth, length. Again, I'm still playing around with everything as I work down towards the finished schedule and plan for 2018. Hope you enjoy. Catch you next time on next Monday's episode of Mondays in MMORPGs. See you guys.